The King in Yellow has a creator, and the reason I say this is because I have been watching the last few minutes of the A.R.G by wifies, and it bothered me a lot. Throughout the entire A.R.G, the King in Yellow was shown as this almighty and mysterious figure that was not possible to defeat. Take the Netherworld, for example. Derlord had almost gave up on everything.
This is clearly not working.
And had to use a Minecraft glitch with a boat to get under the world and then escape the level. This is how hard it should be to beat the King in Yellow. Now I have only one problem with this. After all the hassle, right? After solving all the puzzles, all the worlds, when Derlord finally was in front of the King in Yellow, Derlord made him lose just like that. Like, come on, be honest here. We all thought the climax would be some kind of mind-boggling thing. And instead, we get this ending where Derlord defeats the king with just a spell that was inside the king's own world. Then wifies dropped a behind-the-scenes video and it opened the gates for me. I got sucked into a rabbit hole that I wish I didn't even start. I found evidence on how the D.M.S, a part of the US government, is involved in this, how the King in Yellow was never the final boss, and lastly how there is another god, a monster that is way more powerful than the king himself, and maybe he is not the creator of the king, but he is definitely the final boss. If you go to the Google Drive folder where Derlord's footage was originally supposed to be stored, the footage is not there. Instead, there is a note sitting there. The footage has been confiscated by the D.M.S, the Department of Metaphysical Sciences. That is it. No explanation, no context, just a note from a government organization saying they took everything. So who is the D.M.S? Why do they care about Derlord? Why are they investigating any of this? To answer that, we need to go somewhere completely different. A completely separate A.R.G that I covered in detail in my previous video. So I'm not going to go super deep into it here. Please go watch that one for the full breakdown. But there is an A.R.G called Finding a Player That Doesn't Exist. And in it, a player named Alex starts doing something that makes absolutely no sense to anyone watching. He pulls out a compass, he faces dead north, and then he just starts walking, holding down left click the entire time, mining through everything in his path without stopping. Mountains, oceans, caves, gravel pits, it does not matter. He goes through all of it. He does not stop. He does not turn. He does not respond to anyone or anything. He just keeps going north, always north. For 6 years of in-game lore, his friends eventually got so disturbed by it they just abandoned the server entirely, and Alex kept going, alone, still heading north. And as people started digging deeper into this A.R.G, they found things hidden in the footage, government watermarks, encrypted messages, hidden text buried inside static, and it all pointed to one organization that was behind everything, the D.M.S, the Department of Metaphysical Sciences. Now you might have already connected the dots, and yes. This is the exact same D.M.S that confiscated Derlord's footage, the same organization. In Alex's story, the D.M.S hijacked his Minecraft world and turned it into a controlled experiment. They wanted to test how long a human mind could survive being forced into a completely rigid robotic existence with zero freedom and zero deviation. They brainwashed him through the game. Redstone torches placed in specific spots to guide his movements. The whole world was a lab and Alex was the test subject. Now, in wifi's behind the scenes video, it is mentioned that the D.M.S is currently running active experiments on 4 players total. One of them is Alex, as we just talked about. Another one is someone called Extreme Gamer, who was also subjected to a similar kind of experiment where the D.M.S tested what the human brain could handle under extreme conditions. That is 2 confirmed experiments. 2 slots are still open. So the question that has been sitting in the back of my head ever since I found this is, who are the other 2? Who else is the D.M.S experimenting on right now that we do not know about yet? And I have a theory on that, but we need to get through a few more things first before I get there, because we also need to talk about someone else who is connected to the D.M.S and changes how you see everything. The D.M.S is not the one doing the actual dirty work themselves. They are the organization, the structure, the name on the door, but they have a subdivision a specific unit that handles the actual hands on human experimentation, the ones physically testing how far the human brain can be pushed before it completely breaks down. That subdivision is called archive. Think of the D.M.S as the building and archive as the people inside actually running the experiments. And once you know archive exists, you start seeing their fingerprints absolutely everywhere in these A.R.G stories in ways that genuinely make your skin crawl. So remember, in finding a player that doesn't exist, when Alex and Crafty were just building together at the beginning, everything completely normal, nothing suspicious at all. And then Alex suddenly stops what he is doing, turns to Crafty and just asks, "Is that you?" And everyone watching was confused. Who else would it be? They are literally the only two people on the server, but people started digging, decoding gibberish, following signs, tracking down a YouTube URL hidden inside the footage, and when they finally pieced together Alex's actual point of view from that exact moment, there was a figure. Just standing there in the distance, watching them, not moving, not speaking, just there. Someone had been in that world with them the whole time. And then when Alex mined down and found this weird room full of signs, which itself is like weird as hell, but that is not even the main thing about it. When Alex is about to leave the room, he sees a figure whose username was like some kind of gibberish. But when you decode it, it comes to archive. Whoever that figure was, whoever built that room, they were working for the D.M.S, watching Alex, guiding him, not just monitoring him from a distance, but actively traumatizing him throughout the entire experiment. It is by far the most disturbing thing I have come across in any A.R.G I have ever gone through, and I have gone through a lot of them. Do you remember the very beginning of wifies' A.R.G? Derlord is walking through the cave at the very start, and he keeps stopping abruptly, multiple times, out of nowhere, completely out of place. And it turns out Derlord could hear footsteps. Someone was physically present in that space, following him through that cave the entire time. We all just assumed it was the King in Yellow. What else were we supposed to think? But here is the problem with that. The King in Yellow cannot have a physical form. I made a whole video on this, so please go watch that for the full breakdown, but the short version is this. In Robert Chambers' original 1895 book, The King in Yellow is never described as a physical being, not once across the entire book. The only description you ever get of him is a tattered yellow robe and a pallid mask. He is not a body, he is not a creature, he is an idea, a force. Something that spreads through a specific piece of writing, and he cannot be physically standing behind you in a cave. If it wasn't the King in Yellow, then who was it? Who was the entity behind Derlord? I think it was Archive. To understand why I think that we need to talk about the second act of the play. At the end of episode 1, Derlord reaches a crossroad and goes left, and at the end of that path, there's a gate. He gets close, peeks inside, and then we see something that gets completely cut, censored. Whatever was behind that gate cannot be shown to normal viewers apparently, and then Derlord just stands there for 15 whole seconds. And then he runs, sprints out of there as fast as he possibly can. Now here's the question that got me. Why 15 seconds? Think about it. If you opened a door and saw something genuinely terrifying, something monstrous, something that made every instinct in your body scream at you, you would not stand there for 15 seconds. You would be gone immediately. The moment your brain registers danger, you move. That's just how humans work. But Derlord stood there for 15 seconds before he ran. So either whatever he saw wasn't immediately terrifying in an obvious way, or he physically couldn't pull himself away from it. And that distinction is everything. A lot of people watching this jump to the conclusion that Derlord saw the King in Yellow himself standing behind that gate. That's what broke him. That's what sent him sprinting. Or Derlord simply just saw what Avery saw, a hallway with gates. But why would a person this smart or someone like Derlord's caliber be so scared after finding out about a hallway? And I understand why people think that, it's the obvious answer, but here's where it falls apart completely. The king in yellow does not have a physical form. This isn't my opinion, this is what the source material says. And in that book, nowhere, not once, is it ever stated that seeing the king in yellow physically will drive you insane. If Derlord didn't see the king in yellow standing behind that gate, what did he see? He saw the second act of the play. And once I landed on this, everything else just started clicking into place one after another. In the world of the book, the play called The King in Yellow has 2 acts. The first act is normal, but the second act is something else entirely. It is described as so overwhelmingly, devastatingly beautiful that anyone who reads it or watches it simply cannot come back from it. Not because it's violent or horrific in an obvious way, but because it shows you something, a truth, a reality so far beyond what the human mind was designed to process that once you've seen it, your brain just starts to come apart at the seams, and that's why Derlord stood there for 15 seconds. He wasn't frozen in fear looking at a monster, he was reading, he couldn't stop. Now think about what Archive does. They test how far the human brain can be pushed. They put Alex in a Minecraft world and observed what happened to his mind under controlled extreme conditions. They had a physical figure watching him the entire time, documenting everything. What if they did the exact same thing to Derlord? What if Archive built that world, placed the second act of the play behind that gate, and then followed Derlord through the cave, watching to see if a human mind could actually survive exposure to it? Derlord was never just a player who stumbled into something strange. He was a test subject. Experiment number 3, and the D.M.S has his footage because they ran the experiment and they are documenting the results, which also answers the question of who fills those 2 empty slots in the D.M.S experiment list. Derlord is one. And given everything that happened to Avery after he found that laptop, everything the second act did to him in the church, everything the king put him through, I think Avery is the other one. The D.M.S did not just run one experiment. They ran 2 back-to-back on the same world. Derlord first, and when that concluded, they put the laptop in a locker and waited for the next person to find it. Avery was not an accident. He was the follow-up experiment. What if the D.M.S created the King in Yellow's world entirely? Look at the D.M.S logo. Actually look at it properly, because if you know anything about cosmic horror literature, you are going to recognize exactly what that symbol is. That is Cthulhu. And this is where everything starts falling into place in a way I was not ready for. Let me introduce you to what I think is the actual creator of everything in this story, Cthulhu. Now, in wifies behind the scenes video, there is a detail that almost everyone completely glossed over. The original plan for the A.R.G was completely different to what we got. In the original version, when Derlord was trapped in that nether phase with no exit and no way forward, he was not supposed to escape alone. He was going to be guided out by another god. Something far older and far more powerful than the King in Yellow ever was. The original plan was that Cthulhu would appear and help Derlord defeat the King in Yellow, and that was going to be the actual climax of the whole story. Now, is it a coincidence that the D.M.S logo is literally the symbol of Cthulhu? I do not think it is. There are 2 ways to read this, and both of them are honestly terrifying in completely different ways. The first theory is that Cthulhu is just a metaphor for the D.M.S, that the D.M.S created the King in Yellow's world as a controlled experiment, placed Derlord inside it, guided him through the whole thing, and engineered the ending so that Derlord would find the spell and defeat the king. Not because they wanted to help him, but because they wanted to see if a human being could actually survive the second act and come out the other side still functioning. The whole A.R.G was never a supernatural event. It was always a lab. The King in Yellow was just the test, and Cthulhu, the D.M.S, were watching from outside the entire time, waiting to see what would happen. That would also explain why the ending felt so easy, because it was designed to end that way. The D.M.S built the world, they built the spell into it, and they guided Derlord exactly where he needed to go to find it. They controlled the outcome from the very beginning. The second theory is way darker and honestly the one I keep coming back to. What if the King in Yellow was never the real threat at all? What if he was just a stepping stone, a small obstacle designed to weaken and test Derlord before the actual final boss shows up? What if Cthulhu helped Derlord defeat the king specifically to get Derlord into a vulnerable position right after? You spend everything you have defeating the king. Your guard is completely down. You think it is finally over. And then the real thing shows up. And that is why the lore is not finished. That is why the D.M.S has everything documented, because the experiment is not over. Derlord defeated the king in yellow, but there is something waiting on the other side of that victory that is so much bigger and so much more dangerous than anything we have seen in this A.R.G. yet. The king in yellow was never the final boss. I genuinely do not know which of these theories is right. Maybe both are true at the same time in different ways. Maybe neither are. And there is something else entirely that I have not found yet. But I cannot stop thinking about it, and I needed to put it out there because this community has consistently solved things I never could on my own. So if you have spotted something I missed, if you have a theory about Cthulhu or the D.M.S. or what actually happened to Derlord after the ending, drop it in the comments. I read everything. And subscribe, because at this point we are getting genuinely close to something, and I want you there when we find it.